So there are obviously a million ways of measuring the different personality types of people. This is one particular taxonomy: the entrepreneur, the producer, the administrator, and the integrator. And no person is just one of those four. Everybody's a blend of all of these talents. But everybody's dominant in one and has weaknesses in the other. And so I'm clearly an entrepreneur. I really love inventing the new things, seeing things in the distance, and trying to do things ahead of their time. The producer is the person who actually makes things happen, who actually takes a product and executes on it, who sells it, who all the execution stages to get it in customers' hand. And I'm very high on the E. I'm actually moderate on the P. There are some entrepreneurial types who have no P, and they're just not good at that, or even negative. They get in the way of getting things done. And that's actually okay, as long as they find someone else to complement them who is good at getting things done, and then have mutual trust and respect for them so that together as a team they can get things done. But you have to get the P in the company as well. And then the administrator, that's a little bit more the bureaucrat. You have to have that in the company too to succeed. It sometimes gets in the way of things, but it also helps organize things. The administrator puts systems in place and helps the trains run on time and keeps the wheels in the bus when things are going crazy, when orders are going gangbusters, and it helps. And any one of these skills taken to extreme is a negative. But any one of these skills in the right balance with others is exactly what you want. And the final skill, the integrator, that is the person who is more of a people person, who understands the other three people there and helps those other three people, those three talents get along, because very often those other three talents hate each other's guts. And sometimes the E hates the A. Sometimes, almost always, the P hates the A. The P wants to get things done, and the A is trying to put a system in place. And you really need to have all of them. And I'll just give you an example, just so you can sort of self-classify yourself in your strengths and weaknesses on these different things. Imagine that there's those four personality types sitting together in a room. There's a window over there, and we're looking out, and the window's over there, and there's some dirt on the window. And the E looks at the window and says, "Look over there. There's a parking lot. We could build a building that could," sees all of this stuff in the future, doesn't even see the window. The P looks at the window and says, "There's a scratch in that window. That window's dirty. We better clean that, take care of that." The A looks at the window and says, "We could make a form, and people could fill out when they see something wrong, and then they'll turn that in, and that will go in a queue, and then we'll get that taken care of." And the I looks at that and says, "I wonder what those three people are thinking." It really is true. There are many people. I don't do it enough on the I. I have some I, but not enough. I try and always hire an I at the company, where the I is actually more worried about what other people are thinking and feeling than the actual product or execution or customer. But that's hugely important. And the I is the person who sits in a room when the P is screaming at the A and says, "Listen, you both have a point here. The P wants to get this done, and the A says, let's do this. And how about if we do," and bridges the gap. And that's an important skill for a CEO to have as well, of course, to try and bridge that balance. But it's really important to try and find balance in the company on all those skills. And let me show you an example of what happens in a company that doesn't have all those. Because I've seen this many times, and this is one of the things we learned after so many companies. I mean, think about this. We've had 100 companies in 15 years, probably 150 CEOs. Probably, say, 3 rounds of financing each, so 300 rounds of financing, and all the problems and challenges and products and delays and all the things. And the companies that made it had all these skills and balance, and the companies that didn't. And let me give you the very specific example. So a company always starts with the E. An I can't start a company, an A can't start a company. The company starts with the vision of the E person, the entrepreneurial person. And the company starts out with that E, and it's sort of making forward progress. It's going up, up and to the right, because there's a vision there. But then very quickly, if the E just has vision and can't execute anything, the thing just fizzles out and turns into nothing. And it has to bring this P skill into the company at some point. It could be in a week, it could be in a month, it could be in a year, but at some appropriate point, before the idea fizzles out, some P skill has to happen in the company. Now, it could be a solo entrepreneur who is an E who also knows how to program or knows how to build or knows how to do whatever. So that can be in the same person, but that skill's got to be there. And it's usually better if it's in another person who really gets along with the E. It really is great when there's a team who gets along. But then eventually, even if the company starts producing things and starts selling things and starts going, it eventually too will fail if it doesn't get some system in place to be able to handle the order, get the money in the bank, pay the bills, pay the employees. Those are all A-like functions, but there's many other A-like functions that have to happen to make the company get past that stage. But even then, a company will eventually fail because everybody will be at war with one another unless there's enough I skill in the company to keep the company going up. And one of the things that I wish I had learned when I was in college and life anywhere was what this I skill even was and how to learn more about it myself. And I never had a class on how to do the conflict resolution between people when they are having problems, or even to see good ways of giving people feedback. That's a very, very valuable skill to make a successful company. And if you look at some of the really, really incredible companies, they almost always had great teams of people, sometimes a duo, sometimes more, at the top, who really, really had opposite skills, but really, really got along and had such mutual trust and respect for one another that you really got the best out of both of them. You never had any war between them. And that really is amazing when that happens. And if I were to have any single thing that I would recommend for success in a company, it would be this, after, of course, having a decent idea. But I even think this is more important than having a decent idea, because this team working together can take a not-so-decent idea and turn into a decent idea, because they'll have a method to get from not decent to incredible, whereas a great idea will usually fizzle if it doesn't have all this together. So that's one thing that I learned very painfully. I wish I had learned it earlier in my career. I could have made some things that weren't successful, but I really urge it. A lot of this learning came to me from a consultant named Ichak Adizes, who first thought about this in the life cycles of companies and the different stages that companies go through. You can plot this either in time or at stage of revenues or things like that. But there's a great degree of flexibility. I'm just saying, and repeating it a lot of times because I think it's so important, get complementary skills in your startup. It's very, very valuable.